Well, hello everyone. It is April and today I am here to recommend 10 of my very favorite memoirs. These are the tippy top of my favorites and I wanted to share them with you. First book I want to recommend to you is a book that really impacted me. It is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Now, Chanel Miller was a young woman who was raped by Brock Turner. And she was known as Emily Doe for quite a long time until after the trial, he was sentenced to practically no time for this terrible thing that he did to her. And it's her experience being the victim of rape and also how it affects you and your family, how it feels in the hours after the rape and then also in the years after the rape in the justice system. It was fascinating. This is a gift to any woman who has been sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, sexually abused. I just think it was brave and beautifully written, and Chanel Miller is a personal hero of mine. I would also recommend that you read How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. This book is about Saeed's experience being a Black gay boy. Man at this point. He's a Black gay man, young man. And it's about how his family reacts to it. Not all of his family was supportive. He came from quite a religious background, so he really struggled coming out and being accepted by his family. Some of his family were very welcoming, which is really wonderful. It also explores his experience being kind of over-sexualized and fetishized by other men as a Black man. And that was something I found very fascinating and really sad. And I just felt like this was the most vulnerable, probably of all of them, it's probably the most vulnerable memoir. It just felt like you were sitting there and he was just pouring out his heart to you. And I just loved it. Next is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. This is about a therapist going to therapy. I think we all have in our heads that therapists have everything together. Like they understand life in a way that no one else can. And I think that's true to a certain extent, but I loved this book because it shows that therapists really are people, finding their own lives difficult to sort through at times. And in this case, Lori is dating a man. It's a long-term relationship. She has a child separately from this man. And he knew about her son right away, right from the get-go. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? I don't want a child. So this is over. Oh gosh, I'm like breaking my bookcase. It's fine. So he ends it and she is shocked and devastated. And it's about her experience going to therapy, but it also intermixes these moments with her and her own clients who come in to her therapy and her relationship with them. I just thought it was wonderful. So many little nuggets of fantastic wisdom. I should definitely reread it and go through it with like a highlighter or something because it was wonderful. Next is Educated by Tara Westover. Educated is about Tara's experience living really outside of society. She lives kind of in the middle of nowhere in America as a child, and her parents believe that the end of the world is coming. She is not encouraged to go to school. She helps out her family around their small business, and she feels really alone. And rightfully so. Like, she leans on her brother throughout this book, but her brother is physically abusive towards her. And it's actually very difficult to read those areas of the book. I found really, really hard, and I was furious with her brother. But it's about her living this way, and even, you know, things like the medical world. Like, they didn't go to the hospital. If someone was in a car crash, it took a long time before they brought that person to the hospital. Concussion or no concussion. And it was really not a way to have a childhood. It just wasn't, it wasn't conducive to Tara's desires. And she ended up, you know, going to Harvard. I think she went to Harvard and Oxford, and she just really went really, really far with her schooling. And it's really her reflecting back. I thought it was very, very good. The book that I always compare it to, I will say, is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. And I feel like Jeanette Walls had more time to reflect, and maybe not, but it felt that way. There was more resolution when reading The Glass Castle. This is about Jeanette's childhood, living with two very eccentric parents. Her mother was an artist, and her father was a businessman who like hopped from like one job to another and always had these big dreams, and the family would like follow him around in these big dreams. But very frequently they were put into poverty because of their parents' decisions. And it shows Jeanette Walls like digging through the garbage to get any scrap of food at school. And it reflects on her life, and it shows how her parents did love her, but just weren't really equipped to parent. They had a really hard time parenting and knowing how to do that well, and how to like provide what their children needed. And it's about their parents deciding to have this eccentric life. And I just thought it was brilliant. There's a lot of love in this book. I was infuriated again reading this book, but there was also a lot of love. So I thought it was just so beautifully written. Next is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. Oh my goodness. This is about Maggie O'Farrell's, I think it's 17 Brushes with Death. And so it's a memoir via these small moments in her life where she really nearly died. In some cases, she was nearly murdered, okay? And then in other cases, she had like childhood illnesses. It was incredible. Like, if you like literary fiction, read this one. Read this one. You will not regret it. Incredible. Next is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is a classic for a reason. Maya wrote a series of memoirs. I've only read 2 of them, I believe, and she really hones in on certain times of her life, and this follows her as a child. As a child, she was sexually assaulted by a man, and soon after that assault, he was murdered. And so at that moment, she decided in her mind as a child that it was her fault, and so she stopped speaking for years. And it is about her childhood, living with her grandparents, and then also living with her mother, and her interesting relationship with her mother and her relationship with her brother. Maya is gorgeous, and she narrates this herself. So if you can listen to this on audio, oh my goodness, do that, because Maya's voice is legendary. It is legendary for a reason. She is incredible. Very, very missed, that's for sure. Next is The Fact of a Body by Alexandria Morenzo Lesnevich. This follows Alexandra's time as I think she's a student. She's aiming to become a lawyer, a defense lawyer, and she is a student, and they get this case where a man has been accused of killing, I think, several young boys. And he sexually assaulted them before he killed them. And she was raised in a household that absolutely was against the death penalty. And as she delves into this case, she starts to question that philosophy that she has held so dear for her entire life. And as she is researching this case, things from her own childhood and the abuse that she experienced as a child from her grandfather, I believe, sexual abuse, starts to bubble up, and you explore that with her. It's very vulnerable and very hard to read, but really good. I thought that was really, really, really good. Next is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I just loved this book. I thought it was really honest take. Like, I will say there are definitely other memoirs on this list that are much more vulnerable. I feel like Michelle, because she is in so much of the spotlight, I do feel like she kept the reader at a distance. She let you in. Like, she explores her childhood. Oh my goodness, her parents. I fell in love with her mother reading this book, and how her mother raised Michelle and her brother was, I just thought, really, really genius, really tapping into letting them know that she knows that they know right from wrong, and imploring them to look within themselves, to make decisions for themselves, because you really are you're going to be raising adults in the long run. So I just loved her mom. So it explores that, explores her meeting Barack, it explores them getting married and really struggling to conceive. I think both of her girls were conceived via IVF. And I read this just before I went through IVF myself for Nora. And I really enjoyed reading that. But I will say, you're held at a little bit of a distance, and I completely understand why, considering her notoriety, her fame, her popularity. I think you need to have that if you're that kind of public figure. But yeah, I very much enjoyed learning more about Michelle. And last but not least is Wild Swans. I talk about this book all the time. This is about 3 generations of Chinese women. And we meet Young Chang, who is the author, and she is talking about her own experience, as well as her mother and her grandmother's experience during the Mao regime, and when Mao came into power, and how China was before him and after him. And I thought this was riveting. I really, at the time that I picked this up, knew nothing about Chinese history at all, and this was incredible. I definitely want to read more by her, because it was so eye-opening and I just learned so much. So I definitely want to read more by that author. But those are my top 10 memoirs. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite memoir is. I would love to know, and I will chat with you tomorrow. Okay, bye guys.